What's up? Welcome into Week 10 Waiver Wire Q&A. I'm your host this week, JL, joined by my good friend, JJ Zachariason. What up, JJ? Uh-oh, you're muted.
This is the second week in a row that I did that. Last week I was paying tribute to you. This week it was just an honest mistake.
This week you're sweating me.
Yeah. I'm good though. Things are good. I voted today. Everyone go out and vote.
Too.
It is an important thing to do. So yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, it feels good to live in this country today.
It really does. And you know what's really nice about living in the city is I got to walk like 15 feet that way to go vote. It was so convenient. Nice. It was so easy.
Yeah, I'm in the burbs, so we gotta. Although it's right down the street. I mean, it takes
still not too bad.
3 minutes, to drive there. Not too bad.
We're here answering all of your Week 10 waiver wire questions. So if you have questions about the waiver wire or fantasy in general, throw them in the chat. We will be prioritizing the waiver wire questions today, but a lot of times these other questions come in and JJ and I will handle them. We'll answer them. If you haven't already, make sure you are following FanDuel on Twitter. Follow them on TikTok, Instagram, all those little nice names there on the bottom. And if you haven't already, hit that like button. Subscribe to FanDuel on YouTube. You won't regret it. I promise you. JJ, we already got some questions in here. We got Victor says, hey, JJ, I've held on to Njoku since his injury. I also picked up Dulcich, who someone dropped. Should I even consider picking up Cole Kmet and hope this continues? Thanks. Also, great call on Ravens D.
Yeah, I had the Ravens D as a buy last week just because their schedule from here on out is amazing. And then obviously the defense itself is playing a lot better. I think that the Ravens, there's sort of like an anchoring bias going on with them with the way that they performed against Miami earlier this year. And everyone thinks like, oh, it's a great matchup for quarterbacks. It's a great match. No, the Ravens defense is good. They're playing very, very well. And go Google Ravens schedule because from here on out, it is after their bye. It's unbelievable. So they could be a plug and play defense from here on out. But anyway, Cole Kmet, I do not think that he's anything more than a streamer. This past week was the first time that he hit a 20% target share this season. And that's in not only the most run heavy offense in football this year, but the most run heavy offense in football basically over the last 15 years. And so, that means that low target share in a low volume offense leads to little targets. I mean, this is only the second time he's hit 4 targets in a game. He had 6 this past week. Maybe this is a sign of something to come, but he did have a better route participation this past week. He ran a route on 80% of Justin Fields dropbacks. But even still, I just, I don't think that we're going to necessarily see shootouts the way that we saw it against Miami this past week. I think that you're totally fine with Njoku and Greg Dulcich.
Yeah, the Chicago Bears, last week they were tied for last in passing attempts in the league with the Titans. This week they just pulled ahead. They have 188 passing attempts in the season compared to the Titans' 176, which are both extremely low.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, and again, that's looking at it from like a raw standpoint. When you look at it from a plays run standpoint and such, they run the ball so much. I mean, I'll pull it up right now. But their pass. So I look at like pass attempt and rush attempts divided by pass attempts and total rush attempts. And so their pass rate right now, Chicago's is sitting at, 36.7%.
Wow.
Which is just obscenely low, just absurdly low. Like we just don't see teams do that very often. The Titans are at 41% for some context, and Atlanta is at 39, almost 40%. So I'm telling you, the Bears are pacing to be the most run-heavy team that we've seen in like I'm pretty sure since 2011, we haven't seen a team below the 42% mark. So we see 3 teams there right now. But the Bears are just like otherworldly with how run-heavy they've been.
Do you feel like Justin Fields being better in the last couple of weeks, do you think that changes their pass volume? Are they going to shift that a little bit more going on the season, or do you expect more just low volume?
Not necessarily, because I mean, a lot of what he's doing and why we're seeing the resurgence and this uptick in fantasy production is because of his rushing, and that then tallies into the rushing numbers that I'm talking about here. So, maybe they'll throw a little bit more, and just natural regression, they should throw a little bit more. But, I mean, Justin Fields, what he's doing is just as much on the ground as it is through the air.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a question from Daryl in here, said, was Zach Moss a trade target for Indy or a Bills roster dump? Does he leapfrog to the top? So how are you feeling about Zach Moss here in Indianapolis?
I mean, I'd be surprised if he if he did anything in fantasy this year. Deion Jackson still saw a really nice workload this past week. I still think Deion Jackson has some decent juice, but they played New England. New England's a team that is really good against running backs, arguably the best in football this year. So I'm not that surprised that they weren't able to do much with that just horrific offense that they have with Indianapolis. Whenever there's guys who get traded like this, unless it's a player who is in a sincerely crowded backfield, who has shown efficiency in the past, and who's going to an offense where he's being placed into extreme efficiency, you have to ask yourself, why is that guy in the trade in the first place? Why was that guy leaving that team in the first place? Right. Jeff Wilson, it's a little bit different because he's they just traded for the best running back in football, or one of the best running backs in football. Jeff Wilson's not better than Christian McCaffrey. He's more expendable now. And oh, by the way, he fits this scheme in Miami just as well. So it makes total sense why Jeff Wilson went and was traded, and why Miami wanted Wilson. And obviously, like, trading for Christian McCaffrey doesn't mean that McCaffrey's bad. There was a clear reason why they did that. But, Zach Moss was sort of a throw-in within this deal because they went and they got Nyheim Hines, and they can only hold so many running backs. Maybe he gets an opportunity later in the season, but I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get healthier, hopefully, knock on wood. Deion Jackson, I think, is still the 2. And then Zach Moss would get involved. It's not like he's done that much throughout his career to make us feel like super, super confident in him.
Yeah, even when he's gotten the opportunity, he's just really hasn't looked anything special.
Yeah.
I'm with him. Jay in here asking, is Drake London droppable in redraft?
I think in a lot of leagues, probably. If you're in like a 10-team league, for sure. I have him a little bit past my top 100, so he's outside the top 100 right now, and it's not because of target share. It's not because of how he's performed. Really, it's really comes down to what I was just talking about with Atlanta. Having a 40% pass rate right now, and that offense just. I mean, Marcus Mariota, since I think week 3, has one 150-yard passing game. It's just impossible to really get production there. And the difference between Atlanta and Chicago is that Justin Fields throws it deep at the highest rate in the league. So guys like Darnell Mooney, even a Chase Claypool, might have these one-off decent weeks, but Marcus Mariota is not forcing it down the field nearly as much as what Justin Fields is doing. So they're not gaining those chunk plays the same way that Chicago does. So I do think that London, at this point, you're just holding him. I know it's frustrating. He's not going to give you that much production. The schedule is really nice. On paper, everything looks great. Target share's there. Schedule looks good. He's, a rookie who rookies tend to do better during the second half of their rookie seasons than the first half. He's a really good prospect. I mean, everything on paper looks great for Drake London, but I can understand if you need to drop him at this point.
It feels bad. Man. Feels very bad. And Maria in here saying, let's go. What up, Maria? Welcome in. And Matt, surfing. Surf's up, bro. Surf's up. It's November, though. Patriot fan asking, should I drop DeAndre Carter for Terrace Marshall?
I mean, if you have a long-term view on your team, I think that's okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have Marshall ahead of Carter in my top 150. So I wouldn't say that this is a bad idea. I mean, the Panthers have one of the best wide receiver schedules from here on out. They're going to be trailing, so they're going to force some more passing volume than what you would expect from them. And then Terrace Marshall, like a 22.5% target share per game over his last 2. He's playing as the number 2 without Robbie there. I think it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, DeAndre Carter's fine. I think both of them are like pretty decent fill-ins and stuff, like while bye weeks are going on. But I think it's fine if you're looking from like now through week 17, and from that perspective, I think it makes sense.
I know you were hyped on Terrace Marshall coming in. I was pretty excited about him as well. It feels good to see him out there playing. Do you think that long-term he has value?
I mean, typically we don't see players like this emerge and be very fantasy relevant. I mean, I think that he could be like a wide receiver 3 maybe, but I highly doubt we're going to see like alpha Terrace Marshall in the NFL.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah,
it's disappointing. Jordan in here asking, what are we doing with Leonard Fournette? Sell, hold? Is nervous from the beat reporter report and asking if he should dump his fab on Rachaad White.
So look, I love Rachaad White. In my prospect model, he was the RB3 in this class for me. I had Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and then a decent gap to Rachaad White and then James Cook. But Rachaad White are really good. His top comp in my model was David Johnson, and the guy who drafted David Johnson was Bruce Arians, who's now part of this Tampa Bay team who drafted Rachaad White. So really good pass catcher. A little bit like kind of leaner in frame, but he can do it all on a football field. So I'm not surprised that he's having a decent season as a rookie. with that being said, anytime you can take a beat report and go the opposite direction, I generally do that because, they don't, I mean, they're guessing just as much as you and I would in terms of forecasting what's going to happen in this backfield. They're doing that after a game where we saw an even bigger split in snaps. And we're continuing to, I mean, this isn't new information is what I'm saying.
Right.
Like we've seen this snap share and this backfield share be split between Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette for weeks now. This is not anything new. And so selling based on the beat reporter news, you're only going to sell even lower than what you would have sold, say, last week for Leonard Fournette. So if anything, I might lean buy and say, oh, maybe they just end up using Leonard Fournette a little bit more down the stretch. And we know that Fournette has RB1 upside rather than going off of that beat report. I mean, look, you should be concerned if you have Leonard Fournette. Like, it is concerning because Rachaad White's been digging more and more into his workload, this season. But I don't think the reason that you should like transact and do something about it is because of what a beat reporter's saying.
Yeah. And you got to remember is that your league mates are probably tuned into. I like to assume that my league mates are at least like the default informed because if you're worried about Leonard Fournette, so are your league mates. So it's going to be harder to trade him away now when the public is generally fading him or trending downward.
Yeah.
Justin in here asking Dak or Fields rest of season.
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields. Are you full on the Justin Fields hype train?
Yeah, man. Look, I won't lie. I've been pretty pumped about this because I've been talking about him for like a month now on my podcast, and people are like, yeah, but he was so bad the first month of the season, yada, yada, yada. And then the last 2 weeks, he's just been phenomenal. I mean, a game against Dallas where we all thought he would be horrible. And then obviously this past week where he puts up 42 standard points. I mean, Fields is getting the rushing production that you want and need from a fantasy producer. That gives him a floor each week. It doesn't give him the ceiling. What gives him the ceiling is whenever he can put together, 2 or 3 passing touchdown games along with that. So yeah, I'm going Justin Fields. I mean, he has a pretty rough playoff schedule, so do be aware of that. But over the next few weeks, he should be fine. Plug and play starter. Nothing against Dak, but I'm going to go with the upside with Justin Fields.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that call. Sebastian asks, since he's on bye, it looks like maybe the last chance to get Gus Edwards for cheap. Any thoughts on his value rest of the season? Kenyan Drake had a great game yesterday. JJ, what are your thoughts on this Ravens backfield when Gus Edwards gets back?
I don't know if there's like massive upside from him. I mean, part of the reason why we saw Drake do what he did, number one, he was good. He had a great game, and he's been good over this last like month or so. And so I don't think he's going to just like go away, Kenyan Drake. And if that's the case, then Gus Edwards is going to be part of a committee. J.K. Dobbins could be back eventually too. Gus Edwards is going to be part of a committee. He's never been that much of a pass catcher. So, I don't know if it's really necessary to like aggressively go after Gus Edwards. If you can just throw someone on your bench for Gus, fine, whatever. But if you're going to actually give up something significant for him, someone in your starting lineup or something, I wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Monty asking Raheem Mostert versus Jeff Wilson. Think they'll stay pretty even because of fair, even talent and load management. What are your thoughts? So how do you think this Miami backfield is going to break down between Mostert and Jeff Wilson?
Yeah, I talked about this on my podcast last week. So this is like you want to see receipts. I have receipts for this, but when they traded for Jeff Wilson, my initial instinct was he's a bigger threat to Raheem Mostert than Chase Edmonds is because Jeff Wilson's been good. Chase Edmonds clearly was struggling in that offense. And then on top of that, Raheem Mostert is someone who has not been able to stay healthy. And so my advice was to buy Jeff Wilson before this past week because there was a chance that he would take over, not only have like a 50-50 split in that backfield, but he could take over if there was an injury to Mostert. And he was the cheaper of the two. He's cheaper just in the market. And I would still argue even right now, looking at like I have Jeff Wilson ahead. Maybe this is a hot take. I don't know, JL, but I have Jeff Wilson ahead of Raheem Mostert rest of season right now. Like
I don't think it's a hot take.
Like Wilson steps in, produces better, and sees more snaps than Raheem Mostert in his first game in action. And we've seen him be a good goal line back. We've seen him be a pass catcher, and he's not. It's just to me it makes more sense to go after a guy like Wilson. But I think the market still might prefer Raheem Mostert. So there is still somewhat of a buy window, I think, for Wilson. And by the way, rest of the season, no team has a better running back schedule and adjusted fantasy points allowed than Miami does for their running backs. So you could see some good. I think both guys are attractive. Like I think both of them could give you decent like flex RB2 type production. But if one of them gets hurt, and Mostert would probably be the guy that we would bank on there.
Yeah,
Not
I'm
to,
gonna
not
if
to
I'm gonna put
be,
money on one of them.
yeah, not to be like morbid about it, but like if one guy gets hurt, it would probably be Mostert over Wilson. So let's go with the cheaper guy who also has that injury upside, or at least more, seemingly more. So
Yeah.
I think it will probably stay pretty even as long as they're both healthy. But I have a feeling that Wilson just has more natural upside and could see, I think he could take over more than Mostert would rest of the season. I think there's more upside there.
I don't think it's a hot take at all. The thing that really stood out to me, like you said, was the usage on week 1. Like most of the time,
Yeah.
we see these teams trade for a running back and they'll try and work them in, try and give them some goal line touches that first week. And the fact that that he was essentially splitting with Raheem Mostert in his very first week was promising.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like that breakdown. I don't think it's a hot take. I'm standing there with you, JJ. Dachiel asking, should I be dropping Chuba, Henderson, or J-Rob to pick up Jeff Wilson?
I would drop definitely either Chuba or Henderson. I can tell you who I have. I'm assuming I have Henderson a little bit above Chuba in my rest of season rankings. Which by the way are all over. If you go to lateround.com on my Patreon, they're there. But if I look, let's see, Henderson I have at 129 rest of season. Chuba I actually might have 123 for Chuba. So I guess it's Chuba over Henderson. The reason for that, the logic behind that, when Chuba's healthy, I think he's going to be the third down back, and we're going to see a lot of trailing from this Panthers offense and from this Panthers team. So you could get some cheap PPR points, half PPR points from Chuba. And I think Cam Akers is just going to be used more and more in that backfield as we progress down, throughout the season. And it's not like the rushing offense is very strong for the Rams to begin with. J-Rob, I think, is in a separate tier completely. Like, don't be dropping J-Rob for Jeff Wilson. They have a great playoff schedule. He saw his snap share go from 22% in week 8 to 40% this past week. So James Robinson should be rostered. But I would drop either Henderson or Chuba for Jeff Wilson 100%. I mean, if Jeff Wilson's on your waiver wire, you got to add him this week.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that pick, and that's good to hear you as hyped on James Robinson because I've been worried. I've been worried that they're not going to be able to work him in, but the Jets offense actually is getting it done. They're getting it done.
Yeah. I mean, and again, they have a really good playoff schedule, which is just so brutal for all of my teams that had Breece Hall, but it's still true. They have a good playoff schedule.
Yeah, and still hurts. Still hurts. Come back, Breece. Joseph in here asking, is David Njoku an ad if he was dropped with Njoku himself saying he's playing this week? I'm still skeptical he does.
I think he's an ad regardless if he plays or not this week. He should be rostered because clearly he's getting close to coming back. And if he's back, he's like a fringe top 6 or 7 tight end in fantasy. So yeah, he should be rostered right now.
And you got Deshaun Watson coming back in a few weeks. Yeah, which is really going to help Njoku. We talked about this last time we were on the show together, JJ. Is now the time that you're starting to stash Deshaun Watson?
I think now's about the time. He's rostered in 28% of Yahoo leagues. That's only going to increase week over week. So in most leagues, if you're going to get Watson, this week is probably the week that you got to add him.
Yeah, I agree with you. Mitchell in here asking, I have Brady, Fournette, and Godwin PPR. Been a rough year. Would you try to move on from them since the Bucs are so brutal?
I mean, if you want to, sure. I would be more inclined to move on from Brady because there's just no reason to be using that. Like Brady's basically like a streamer at this point, right? Like he's like you can get that production via streaming for the most part. So I don't think using Brady is necessary depending on what your league is like. Fournette, we talked about earlier. You can rewind a little bit to get our takes on Fournette. Godwin's really interesting because he's seeing enough volume and he's seeing a good target share in his offense, but he hasn't scored yet this year. And there is some regression that's coming his way, but they're not using him that much close to the end zone. He actually doesn't have a single end zone target this year. So they haven't targeted him while he's been in the end zone. And that's very predictive for future touchdowns. So I think Godwin's fine. He's like, of these three, I think that you should feel probably best about Godwin moving forward. But just depends as usual. It just depends on what you can get for these players. I don't think selling Fournette right now is going to really yield that much given the beat report that happened today. And then Tom Brady, like I said, is mostly just a streamer at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Larry in here asking, do you have a favorite defense to stream this week between Saints, add on 15 transactions, Cardinals, Broncos, or Giants?
I love them all. I think they're all good options. I'd probably put the Cardinals below the three others. And then I'd probably put the Saints and Giants and Broncos sort of in the same tier. Broncos would probably be my choice, I think. But all of them are pretty good options. I think the Giants are pretty safe though too. They're 6.5-point home favorites against Houston. So the Giants coming off the bye, probably the safest look, I guess, of those options.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of great. Who is one of their DBs is out this week, and I can't remember the name. So I was looking at it yesterday. I'll have to look that up. Tony in here asking at 7-1, having all the Ravens on my team. Should I play without a defense this week to keep them all, or drop Tucker for a defense this week? It's either dropping him or Rashad White.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'd have to. I don't do enough kicker analysis to know exactly what the replacement level is for Justin Tucker at this point.
Right.
But I will say I usually fill my roster every week. Like I don't like taking chances. But if you are sitting at 7-1, there's no like points. Like points don't really matter within your league. All that matters is head-to-head matchups and record. Then I think it's fine enough to just kind of not roll with a defense.
Yeah, I see a lot of people who are anti doing that, like anti taking a 0 in the spot. I fall more on the side of strategy, right? If it's a good strategy for your team, then go for it.
Yeah.
Jason in here asked, should I trade Zeke Elliott, or stick with him? So what are your thoughts on Zeke?
I mean, it depends on what you would be getting for him. I can tell you, I'll pull up my rest of season. I have Zeke at 64 overall right now. He's sort of in that like Jamal Williams range and Tony Pollard range. Funny enough, it really has. I mean, we don't know what his health status is right now. I'm assuming he's going to play, but the problem with Zeke is that the upside just really isn't there. I mean, like he's not seeing enough work through the air. He sees goal line work, of course, but Tony Pollard's there also. Tony Pollard arguably better at this point in their career. I think Zeke plays a good role for that offense, but we just have to be realistic about what he does in fantasy at this point. And he's a touchdown dependent player. He's like Jamal Williams, honestly. Like that's what Zeke is. And Williams at least has the upside of DeAndre Swift barely is playing at this point. So, right. I'd say, should you trade him? It just depends on what your return would be. I think he's probably more of a hold because I would assume that most people aren't out there trying to acquire Ezekiel Elliott at this point.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of wild that 2022 we're comparing Zeke to Jamal Williams, but this is the world we live in.
Yeah,
this is the world we live in. Dustin asking, is anyone from Indy worth picking up off the waivers? Taking a flyer on Matt Ryan or Foles as a stash?
No.
No, nice and simple. I like it.
No.
Will in here asking, AJ Dillon still worth stashing, or is Aaron Jones' injury not enough to keep Dillon on your bench?
I mean, I would stash AJ Dillon. That's fine. He's like a high-end handcuff at this point because you're not really using him most weeks. I don't see a massive difference. I barely see any difference between. In fact, I'd probably prefer at this point Rashad White to AJ Dillon because assuming that Aaron Jones injury is nothing, right? If the Aaron Jones injury is something and it becomes something, then AJ Dillon obviously gets a bump because the injury has already happened to the guy that he's handcuffing. But yeah, I mean, like he's a handcuff. He's a high-end handcuff. Like that's what AJ Dillon has basically become. He's a guy that you can throw in your flex every once in a while. That's fine, but not something that you're going to want to rely on week in and week out.
Speaking of handcuffs and handcuff strategy here, Kenneth asking, at what point during the season is it okay to drop an upside bench running back like Madison in favor of your backups for your roster players?
It depends on what your team situation is. The way what I tell people is if your team is sitting really pretty, then you want more insurance than upside, right? So if your team is sitting good, and let's say that you have Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, and your team is 8-1 or something, then you can keep that up and just hold Alexander Madison with Dalvin Cook on your roster. But if you're like a 5-4 team, then you might need a spark to be able to get into the playoffs. So get a handcuff that's a handcuff of another running back that's not on your roster. Like if you don't have Dalvin Cook, acquire Alexander Madison because you need that upside. Because if something were to happen to Dalvin Cook, then Cook's not on your roster, but Alexander Madison is, and he would be elevated then to that RB2 status. All of a sudden have this RB2 on your team. So it really just depends on what your individual team is like right now. I tend to play it safe whenever I'm in a good spot, and I play a little bit more aggressive when I'm in a sort of iffy spot.
No, that's good. That's good insight because I think a lot of people have this question, right? They don't know whether to back up their own running backs or other players in the league. And I like that strategy here. Dave in here asking, pretty deep everywhere except tight end. Have one bench spot to fill. Should he go after Dulcich, stash Fields behind Hurts, or pick up the Chargers defense for the playoffs? What do you think?
I mean, I would say like look at your league and see like who needs quarterbacks and if those teams have decent tight ends or depth at tight end. And if they do, then maybe go after Fields and hope that you can trade. But if not, if you want to just play it safe, I would just go after Dulcich and just have that tight end. Just go after the need that you have. And then regarding the Chargers, I mentioned that on my 15 transaction show today. I think they're a good stash, but you don't a lot of some of the times I mentioned players or teams in this case like that on the 15 transaction show, just to get your mind going in that direction for a future week. Like it's not necessarily a got to get them this week, but I want to be ahead a little bit of the way that some of your league mates might be thinking, because everyone's in a different type of league. Like some leagues are more competitive than others. And so if you're in a competitive league, some people might be thinking about stashing defenses for the playoffs right now. And that's why I just wanted to call out the Chargers, because their schedule is really nice.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Bob in here asking, do you think the Patriots defense is worth holding on their bye this week?
It depends on, what your other options are in terms of like who you'd be adding and dropping, etc. But they do get the Jets out of their bye. That's a decent enough matchup. I don't think they're going to be plug and play though, because they get like the Bills down the stretch. They get the Bengals. Oh, the Bengals are fine enough. They get the Dolphins in week 17, which is not what you necessarily want during the fantasy playoffs. So I don't think that they're going to be like I would rather have the Ravens by far than the Patriots from here on out.
That's good to know. Yeah, that's good to know. And typically, unless it's like Bills or even Eagles, I think are at that point this year. I'm not holding a defense through their bye.
Yeah,
typically try and stream.
Dallas maybe. Those kinds of defenses that can really get your quarterback. But it's there's only like 3 of them or so.
Right. Let's see what other questions we got. I'm going to start skipping around because we got a bunch in here and all backed up here. Let's see. We got Raphael asking, what do you guys think of Claypool? What's your thoughts on Claypool rest of the season now in Chicago?
I think he's fine as like a real fit for them, real football fit, but I just have a hard time buying into him in fantasy when we can barely buy into Darnell Mooney. It's just the offense, right? We talked about it earlier. They have like a 37% pass rate. That's just not going to get it done. I don't know if that's changed. I can actually look right now, but entering last week, the team itself was averaging fewer than 20 total targets per game. For the offense. Right now they're at 20. Right now they're at that 20.2. So
they just got over. They just narrowly got over.
Like think about what that means. The entire offense is seeing 20 targets per game when Cooper Kupp is at like 13. Like it's crazy how little they're throwing the ball. So even though like the fit might be fine, the target shares might be fine, we have to recognize that the offense itself is really not conducive for fantasy.
Yeah, it is a great point. Let's see. We got that's the same person. Let's see. DJ in here. What up, DJ? Said, I'm trying to trade Kittle for a wide receiver. Don't know who to ask for. Who do you recommend? I was already declined on Kittle for AJ Brown trade. DJ, these questions are a little harder to answer because we don't know who your league mates are, who they have, who they're going to be willing to trade, all that sort of stuff. So what I always do is for these types of things, go check out Alex Peaked in High School. I believe is his handle on Twitter. He puts out these market trade value charts and they're really good. They give you kind of a gauge of who is in the market value for individual players. It's a really good trading resource. So highly recommend that one. What else we got in here? We got GT Pop says, I'm trading DK, Godwin, and Sanders for Amon-Ra, Higgins. Already have Barkley, Swift, and ETN at running back. Kind of need a better wide receiver. I thought that was a question. It was not a question, I don't think. If it's like confirmation,
sure. Yeah, go for it. That's fine.
Yeah. All right, well, we will end with this one because we are running low on time. Dishway asking, would you sell Wilson high with Corey Davis coming back or stash Garrett Wilson, wide receiver on the Jets, rookie wide receiver on the Jets?
Yeah, look, I love Garrett Wilson. He's someone that I've been stashing and hoping that, this emergence would happen and occur. And it really has taken the Corey Davis injury for it to happen. And so I think as a result of that, you could use that and say, okay, this is the reason why this is occurring and happening. And if you can sell high, then yeah, you can sell high. But I just, there's players like Wilson, like a Garrett Wilson, where I just don't think you can sell very high. Like he's still going to be usable. He's still a talented rookie. That's the kind of profile that I want on my roster. So I just don't know if coming off the last couple of weeks, if someone's going out there and being like, oh, I got to get Garrett Wilson, I got to get someone in this Jets passing attack.
Right.
And so, yeah, I do think that Corey Davis coming back should hurt Garrett Wilson a little bit. But I just don't know if the market's going to agree where you can actually sell high.
All right, that is going to do it for our Week 10 waiver wire Q&A here on FanDuel. If you haven't already, make sure you go follow JJ at Late Round QB. Check out his site, lateround.com. It is a fantastic resource. I'm telling you, one of the best fantasy resources out there. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the like button. If we helped you out at all, hit that like button on YouTube. Subscribe to FanDuel on YouTube as well. And follow on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all these platforms. They have amazing content creators, always putting out amazing stuff, including JJ and I, the handsomest of the creators.
Yes.
All right, guys. All right, JJ, ready to get out of here?
Let's do it, man.
All right. We will see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye-bye. Oops.